Hello, everyone, and welcome to this interview, this episode of Time Out, featuring Greg Kihlström. Greg is an entrepreneur, best-selling author, and international keynote speaker, as well as a principal at the Agile Brand. Greg, thanks a lot for agreeing to for me to interview you today. How are you doing?
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on here.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. Great. So I guess we can just go ahead and jump in. My first question is about the differentiation between AI and automation. I think today they're both used very interchangeably, but there is a key difference. So first, I would just want to get to the bottom of that. What is the difference between AI and automation? And where do you think all this recent hype is really coming from?
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, anything that is based on an if this, then that statement, any kind of algorithm or anything is technically artificial intelligence. I mean, if you automate anything, it's mimicking some kind of behavior that a human might have. And so, at a very fundamental level, automation kind of is AI. But I think there are varying levels of complexity of AI. And so, more recently, what we're all talking about in when we mean AI are things that are much more complex and have much more nuance and things like that. And in the automation space, when things get more complicated and more nuanced, then there's some really interesting things going on in the AI world there. I think what's taking up a lot of the oxygen in the room, so to speak, is generative AI, which is it's related to some of the automation stuff, but it's creating new content based on existing prompts and existing data and things like that. And so I think like RPA and automation and all these things have been around for decades at this point. That's in a sense it's nothing new. I think what's really exciting right now is kind of matching some of these different types of artificial intelligence together to do much more complex and I would say meaningful things.
And as someone who advises Fortune 1000 companies on digital transformation, can you share what your job really entails and where does AI really come into it?
Yeah, definitely. So, it's as nice as it is to kind of jump on the bandwagon with trends and, and everything like that. What I generally work on with the organizations that I advise are there's a problem to solve or there's an opportunity to pursue. So, some of the big challenges are how do we get more efficient in our work? And, that's a huge, that's a time and that's a cost savings. So that's one area. And I think that's where complex automation and things like that can definitely come in. Another opportunity is, personalization and, personalizing the customer experience, even the employee experience is top of mind for a lot of organizations. But to do that, you need to generate a lot more variations of everything. And there just isn't the human resources to do all of that, to create all of those variations, especially when we're talking about personalizing it down to the one-to-one level where, there's something, specifically for me, for instance, there aren't enough people in an organization to do that, particularly when you're serving millions of customers and things like that. And so things like generative AI, some types of, some other things related to AI are really helpful there because, you can get, even if it's not one-to-one, you can create a lot of different variations and reach a lot of people. So I work with organizations to figure out, how do we do this? How do we do it better? How do we do it in a way that's compliant and ethical and on brand and, all of those constraints? The larger an organization, I think the more, let's say, risk averse they tend to be. And so, we look at a lot of those things. In some ways that makes them a little slower to move. And yet they have the resources to actually invest in R&D and things like that to try some things out. So yeah, so that's what I do.
What would you say are the biggest opportunities in terms of AI and automation for today's tech companies? And when you're advising these companies, for example, what do they get the most excited about?
Yeah, I think the most excitement is about the personalization, that I was mentioning. And, there's a few dimensions of that, which is, one is just matching some content on a specific platform. Like when I go to a website, it's showing me something that's specific to me. Maybe it's based on my past purchase behavior or where I came in from or where I'm located, whatever the case may be. That's one aspect of it. But, where it gets really interesting is when we start doing this across channels. And so, that whole omni-channel, every single touch point, even if it's, if you're a retailer that has, brick and mortar, retail stores. So in person, online, having that personalized experience everywhere. I think that's what a lot of my clients are really excited about. The other part would be, just doing things more efficiently and, doing more with less, whether that's less people, whether that's less cost, less time involved, and all that. I think that's a little less exciting than, some of the personalization and stuff, but it's certainly a relief to some of the teams to know that, okay, they're already overwhelmed. Everybody's asking, every company's asking people to do more with less already. And, so that's kind of a relief to the internal teams to say, okay, well, yeah, now I have some help. AI is then augmenting, what me and my team are doing.
Right. And you've mentioned this AI as a tool for personalizing the customer experience. Can you elaborate a little more on that? What does that really entail?
Yeah, so it takes good data, really to start. And so a lot of times when I'm working with an organization, we kind of start there. I mean, you can't personalize meaningfully unless you have the right information about your customers, and your customers trust you enough to give you that information. And obviously you're doing it in a way that's ethical and according to regulations and stuff like that. And so we kind of start with, okay, well, what information do we have? What could we get? What's reasonable to expect? And then what can we do with that benefits not just us as the brand, selling more widgets or, whatever we're selling, but, how do we actually benefit the customer so they feel like they're actually willing to share more information with us because they know when they do that, they get something back. I mean, I think customer loyalty programs, which have been around for decades, kind of prove that model. Now, they have a long way to go as far as personalization goes, but they still kind of prove the model of, I give a little bit of, of my information and I get, free flights or hotel rooms or, whatever the case may be. Now any brand can really do this when they have the right information and then kind of utilize that in the right way. So, it could be showing me the right content. It could be showing me offers that are relevant to me. It could be just reaching me on the right platform. Maybe I like getting SMS messages more than email. And so, reach me on that platform versus the other, and I'm more likely to respond. I think it's spam when I get an email, but I think it's relevant at the right time, right place when it's on when it's an SMS message. So, something like that.
Right. And focusing a little less on like the data and getting served, this personalized content. What do you think about AI in relation to creativity? Do you think that it's something that can boost creativity, or do you think it actually has the opposite effect?
Yeah, I'm an optimist when it comes to this stuff. I back in the day, it's been a while, but I used to be a designer, and I really, I kind of started out in that world and served as creative director of my marketing agency for a little bit. And so, understanding the creative process a little bit and, having been through that, I see AI as a huge way to just get further along at certain stages. It will never, or it should never replace people in the creative process, but it can move things along. So, it can generate ideas, and, 7 out of 10 of those ideas may be terrible, but there may be something to build on. And then, your human team adds 3 more ideas to that. And now all of a sudden you have twice as many ideas as you might have come up with initially, and you can build on from there. Or, AI can take an initial concept a little bit further and in several different directions very quickly, whereas human teams would take a long time to do that. And you're going to throw away most of those, probably 75% of those ideas you're probably going to throw away anyway. And so, let AI take it a little bit further. And then, even further down that creative process, once you get a great idea and a concept that you like, it can create all those variations for the different audience segments and people and locales and all of that, versus that's not really stuff that people really find valuable and enriching to do. It's just kind of work that has to get done, and it's manual labor almost that designers and creatives and copywriters have to do. And so AI can take that off our plates so we can focus more on the creative and the strategic stuff. So I see it as a really, like, if you look at it as a partner, I see it as a huge opportunity. If you look at it as replacing, then I just don't think it's going to get good results. Everything's going to be generic feeling, and it's not going to feel tailored. But, that partnership, I think, is where there's real opportunity.
And for the people who do have this fear, I mean, not the people who want to, just replace people with automation to save money or who knows, but the people that are actually afraid that AI will take their job. I mean, do you think that those feelings are valid? I don't want to ignore, the challenges of AI, but as it continues to evolve, is there anything that you think we need to be mindful of?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are definitely going to be changes. And so, I think the best advice, and, I heard this from someone else, but I'll share it here, is, the best advice is, it's not going to be AI that takes your job. It's going to be someone that uses AI that takes your job. And so I don't think that's 100% true. I think there is going to be some downsizing, and I've already heard of some of that. And I've heard people talking about plans to, they're not going to hire more marketers or creatives for a little while to just kind of see what they can do with it. So I don't think those fears are completely unfounded, but I do think that good creatives that know how to use these tools to do more quickly and do better, they're going to be successful. They're not going to lose their jobs. They're going to be just fine. I think the people that just kind of ignore it and pretend and hope that it goes away, they're going to be in a tough spot unless they start embracing it a little bit. And, people coming into the profession, they're going to have a very different world than I did back as, I started as a web designer back in the late 90s at this point. So, the world was very, very different back then. It's different coming into it. Those people, young professionals need to embrace the AI stuff. And I think a lot of them are. They're probably less averse to it than people that have been doing this a little bit longer. But I don't think it's completely unfounded, but I do think if you embrace it in a meaningful way, you're going to have a lot more success.
And this is kind of a broad question, but I mean, let's say if you're a marketer and you're really interested in AI and you want to embrace it, do you have any tips for where to even get started with that? Or, what are some of the best kind of AI tools that a marketer could really find value in?
Yeah, I mean, I think my advice would be, even barring specific tools, is try a lot of things. And, there's a lot of things that either have free trials or they're not that expensive or they're completely free to use. I think try a lot of things. And there's a lot of talk about, the job of prompt engineer and things like that. And some of that I think is makes good headlines that, there's $500,000 a year positions for prompt engineers and things like that. But all that to say, get good at writing prompts. Like, understand what it means to write a good prompt. When I first saw someone write about that, in the back of my mind I was thinking, it's similar to being good at searching on Google, which, to be honest, some people are actually better at finding things on search engines than others. But I think prompt engineering takes that to the next level. So I would say, try a lot of things, figure out what you do and what you don't like, there's enough opportunity out there. I mean, I try to, at least dabble in one new platform a week just to figure out what's out there. I have some things that are my go-tos and some things that I try, but it's so fast moving. And I think the other big thing that's really happening now is let's call it the more traditional platforms, the Adobes and HubSpots and, Salesforce and all those, they're now adopting generative AI in a big way. And so, it used to be you had to go off of some of these platforms to really get your hands dirty and do stuff with it. Now the larger, more established platforms building in generative AI as well. So, use some of those things as well, kind of see what you like and don't like. And, you may like a separate, platform that you kind of you leave your platform, your software of choice to go do something and then bring it back or not.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've totally noticed that myself, using tools like Canva or Notion SO, that they are definitely integrating that AI part into it, which is pretty cool. Is there anything in particular for you that you're most excited about or looking forward to in terms of how AI is evolving and will continue to evolve? Is there anything in particular that you're waiting to happen, or are things just moving so quickly?
They are moving quickly. I mean, I think what I'm most excited about really is kind of end-to-end, idea generation, content generation, predictive. We didn't talk much about the predictive analytics part of AI, but that's a huge part as well. Is for marketers to be able to predict propensity to buy, even propensity to churn, and because so many companies are moving to a subscription model, that churn rate and things like that becomes even more important. And so what I'm excited about and what I work a lot with organizations on is really that whole life cycle of, let's predict, let's come up with good ideas using AI, let's generate those and feed them to the right channels at the right time, but then also have a feedback loop so that we understand and we get better at all of that over time. And that's not easy to do. I mean, there's right now a lot of companies are doing that manually, and it's just not feasible at the volume that you would need to take all that data and really understand it. But to me, that's what's exciting, is really to just have that feedback loop, that virtuous cycle almost of, we continue to improve. We use humans at the right points in the process to be strategic, to understand what the business needs, to be, to make sure that things are on brand and reaching, talking in the right way. But we use AI for a lot of the rest of that that just makes it easier and smoother and everything like that.
Right. And do you think that, looking forward, do you think that there'll be like a new emergence of jobs that come out as a result of AI and automation? I mean, I know we see companies popping up left and right that are really, I guess, jumping on this AI bandwagon and creating all kinds of platforms. Looking forward, do you think that there'll be kind of an imbalance between those who have jobs and those who don't, or do you view it as really a real opportunity for new job creation in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I think the experts are somewhat split on this. I think for the foreseeable future, most technological advancements have brought more jobs, not fewer. It's different jobs. It's a shift. It requires different types of education. I think this is where, when we start talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, this becomes even more important, because there is a bigger and bigger, digital divide of, those who really have access to some of these tools earlier on, so I think it becomes even more important from an educational standpoint. But I think, there may be some point in the future, 20 years from now, that things may start to shift in a different direction. But I think, much like every other technological advancement, not only in my lifetime, but before that, I think it's going to create new but different jobs. And, it's up to, companies to retrain their existing employees. It's up to schools and, and governments to make sure that people are trained on the right things. And, I think it's too soon to say what 20 years out is going to be, because there's probably going to be something else that changes as well. And so but I think for the foreseeable future, I think we're probably going to be in for a boom of a different type of job.